We now have rules, and now we're on tape. And I do note that we were joined by a couple other members. I think maybe not have been at our first meeting. Kevin, do you want to introduce yourself real briefly?
Sure, yeah. Kevin James, I'm with the U.S. Forest Service, and I was at our first meeting.
Sure, yeah.
So obviously I was very memorable, but no. So yeah, I'm the Forest Service representative.
Great. Thank you. All right. So moving right along, we have to approve our 7:15 meeting summary. Are there any comments or additions to that 7:15 summary? And if not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt as written.
So moved.
David?
I'll second.
Thanks, Barry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Jim, go ahead.
Well, I was just, excuse me if my memory is faulty, but was Mr. Bob at our last meeting, and did he get a chance to introduce himself?
He did. He introduced himself right before you got here.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so we've gone through our first round of agenda items, and we're moving into a little bit more of the subject matter that we're all excited about. So with this determining plan goals, I'm going to pass it over to Melanie to lead us through this next exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and hello, everybody. I'll just introduce myself really briefly for our new members, even though I've been in communication with most of you over email, but not all of you. So my name is Melanie Del Rosario. I work for Triangle Associates, and we have been hired by the county to help facilitate this process of developing the Forest Resilience Plan. And today what we'd like to do is talk through many of the goals that you all drafted. And I appreciate you all working through that process and taking the time to think carefully about what the goals for this plan should be. What we'd like to do is review the goals that you all shared, and we probably won't be able to make it through the process of determining what the final goals for the plan are today. But my hope is that in going through this process of talking a little bit more about goals and objectives, which we covered at our first meeting, is that after we form subcommittees, which is next on the agenda, you will all feel like you have the tools and maybe a little bit better understanding of how to advance this process to the next step of forming goals and forming objectives based on those goals. So we'll go through as much as we can in the next 40 minutes as a full group. And then before we wrap today, we'll talk about homework assignments for you to carry this forward in subcommittees. I just want to, for any of the new folks or anyone from the first meeting, pause and see if you have any questions about what we covered at our last meeting in terms of, goals and objective setting, or any kind of reflections that you've had since our first meeting. Questions for me? All right. Not seeing any. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and this is a tool. It's called Mural, and you may have used it in the past. It's kind of like a virtual whiteboard. And I'm hoping, this might be, if when you meet with subcommittees, you might have interest in using this as a tool. If not, that's okay. I find it useful in these group discussions to just be able to organize our thoughts and share a couple of different things and do some work in real time. So the first thing I have on the screen here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, this was something I shared at our last meeting, and I just want to reorient us to thinking about the difference between goals and objectives, and then eventually threats and actions. So remember, our goal is really our final target. So what do we want to achieve? And then our objectives are how we will achieve it. And then our actions are the specific actions we'll take to achieve our objectives and ultimately the goal. And then the threats are what we might need to overcome. So I used this example at our last meeting. So if our goal is to complete a marathon in September of 2025, one objective, one how, right, we might get there is to develop and execute a running training program. And we might set, we'll complete a half marathon in 2024. And then maybe another specific action would be to complete a 5K in November. One potential threat would be, getting injured, right? Because we've never done this before. So we want to avoid potential injury by working up to longer distances, right? So that's how we would overcome a potential threat. I see a hand from Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
I just want to, I'm pretty sure that you identified this last time, but part of objectives is measurable outcomes.
Yes.
So that the actions can then take you towards those outcomes.
Exactly. So that's why this, the examples that I used are specific, right? So we've got the distance and when, right? So complete the 5K in November under 32 minutes, very specific and measurable. Thank you, Jim. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to zoom out for just a second and bring us back here. So what I've done, and there were quite a few, which is great. So we're going to look at these in pieces so that you can actually read them. These are the goals that you all submitted. And we had a few, sorry, let me just move this over. We had a few that were submitted after we were able to bring them into the packet. So I'm just going to scroll down and give you all a chance. Let me just make this, let's see if 18% works. Oopsies. Where'd it go? Sorry, folks. I want to make it so that you can read it and not be totally overwhelmed by it. Okay. So,
Melody,
yeah,
is this the same list that's in a packet that you sent?
some of them are in the packet, and then we had a few that came in just a little bit later. So I just want to give you all a chance to review some of the ones that came in a little bit after. So starting with number 16. Can folks see that, or do we need to make the size just a little bit larger?
Think we need to make it a little bigger, Mel.
Okay. Yes, Brandy?
Yeah, no, sorry, go ahead. It's small, it's hard to read.
Okay. Let me just do a quick little.
But go ahead.
Go ahead, Brandy, while I'm adjusting this so that everyone can see it.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering if there's a reason why we can't email out to everybody the amended list so that they can look at it on their own computer screen. That's just what I'm wondering.
Is that something? I don't know why this is being so ridiculous. I'm so sorry. I feel like it should not be this hard to zoom in. Okay, there we go. Is this okay now? If you see it on my screen now, starting at number 16, is that big enough?
Good to me. I'm hard to see. I have hard.
Okay.
hard
And then
time seeing.
I'll keep scrolling so that we can see the others that aren't captured. If Kate has a moment to email the updated list, I'll ask Kate to do that so that you can look at it on your own screen. I'm seeing a nod, so I think that that is something we can do. So I'm just going to give everybody a couple minutes to read, starting at number 16. And then I'll scroll down to a couple other, the new ones. And then in the meantime, Kate will send them out so that you can continue to have them in front of you as we walk through this.
Melanie, there's one acronym NIPF that
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with.
I think and whoever wrote this can chime in. I think, is this non-industrial private
Non-industrial
forest?
Private forest.
Okay, I'll spell that out.
Is 15 on the original list or is it added?
15 is on the original list.
Can you just scroll up a little bit so that we can see what's below 20?
Oh, scroll down. Yeah.
Or down, yes, thank you.
No problem.
I don't know if anybody else can, but I can't see what's below 20.
Okay, I just shared the updated document. Forgive me, it's not formatted and pretty, but it should have everything on it. So just give it a minute to come through your inboxes.
Yes, Jim.
Well, we're waiting. I would imagine since we would want to have 3 to 5 goals, there's a little project here of combining.
Combining like statements.
Yes, to make them
Yes.
just a few succinct goals.
Yes, absolutely. So once everyone's had a chance to read through these, I'll start talking through how we can do that. Can I see hands of folks who are done reviewing? You can use the Zoom hand or just raise your hand.
So is 24 the last one?
Yes.
Okay, then yes.
Okay.
Did that list go out to everyone? Even the people who came late to the task force?
Believe we have everyone's email at this point.
Yes, Brandy, it's probably just a little slow.
So while you're waiting for that to hit your inbox, we've got these on the screen. Hopefully everyone is starting to get familiar. What I'd like to do is encourage us to think about zooming back out to that big picture. What do we want to achieve, right? And that goal, that target is really, if we've achieved our objectives, right? We've completed the actions and we've achieved our objectives. This is where we are. This is what we've achieved. Yes, Oliver, I see your hand. Oliver, you're on mute.
Yeah,
There you
okay,
go.
thank you. I think we're probably addressing my question, which I'll state now, but these are all excellent goals, but it's kind of a mixture of goals, objectives, performance standards, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming that that's where you're going to go with this discussion, is try to restate these in more of a goal context. Is that correct?
Exactly, Oliver. Yes. Thank you for getting us there. The great thing about this is you've all done the really hard work of already drafting. A lot of these read more like objectives and some even more like actions, which is great, because that's where we need to go in our next step anyway. But what I'm hoping that we can do is over the next, 15, 20 minutes or so is think about stepping back and come up with some goal statements that tie into a lot of what you've written here, which are really great objectives and some are really great actions. So I pulled out one goal statement as an example because I think it reads well as a high-level goal statement, and that was community wildfire resilience, right? So this is like our big picture. This is what we've achieved at the end of this. And I'll reframe this a little bit just to say, these are our goal statements for the plan, right? And so a lot of these objectives are things that we're recommending, right, in the plan as objective statements. And so the goals are building off of that. So what I'd like to do is we're going to start at the top, and these are in no particular order. It's just the order that we received them. And you have this list in front of you now. Hopefully it's in your inbox. And what I'd like to do is we don't need to go in chronological order because, as you said, Oliver, there's a lot that are similar and connect with each other. But think about if this is probably more of an objective, develop guidelines for county staff to manage county-owned forest lands for resilience. What would the goal statement be for that objective? Right. And so I think if we go through this process with a lot of these statements that are a little bit more specific and take a little bit of a step back and think, if we were to enact this, what would the outcome be? Maybe that can help us get to those bigger picture goal statements. Before we go through that exercise, maybe starting with this first statement, I just want to see if anyone else has any other big picture questions or feedback. Okay, so starting with this first sentence, this first goal / objective, is there anyone who would like to take a crack at defining what the goal might be?
Well, you
This is
can
Barry.
start. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get my hand up on the screen. it looks like from looking at it, it's just like the goals for develop a plan for resistance against anticipated disturbances, blah, blah, blah. I think we could all kind of agree on that kind of stuff. Then the objectives is basically have guidelines for staff to manage county-owned forest lands.
So Barry, if I missed the beginning part of that, but I think you're saying the second part of this sentence is really the goal.
Go, right. And then the objective is to develop guidelines, have staff guidelines for managing county lands.
Right, okay. And Brandy, did you have something you wanted to add to that? Okay.
My thought is that we're going to find this a bunch of times, that the group, like the second part of that sentence there, is something that we can add to. And as we add to it, that will actually develop a major goal. May not be the only goal, but then we'll be able to pull out some of the objectives, and that'll condense it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, Barry. There's a lot, and it's great because, like I said, we've done the work already of listing out more of the specifics, and some get into even specific actions. Okay. Any other comments about this first statement? Do folks generally agree that this is a more appropriate goal statement? Yes, Russ.
Yeah, I think underneath there in your yellow boxes, one of the main reason why I focused on this goal was preparing the residents of the county to survive wildland fire. So emergency response, that's probably my number one concern in this regard. So it involves both preparation of ensuring that the forest is in the best shape for that, but also that our emergency response is well planned too, because they both have to work hand in hand.
So Russ, what I'm hearing is a goal statement that has to do with well-planned emergency response systems.
Yes, yeah. But it's within community wildfire resilience because
Okay.
I at least that's in my own mind that that's your purpose of community wildfire resistance is to protect human life and property.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's kind of like a sub goal, which we can see if it warrants being pulled out separately or if it becomes an objective within. Yes, Barry.
Yeah, and that's, and and you can get into sub goals, policies. But if we want to try to keep it as simple as possible, that would be actually an objective.
Mm-hmm.
And you would have that set. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with it at all. It's super important. It doesn't mean the objectives are less important than the goal.
Right.
Many times the objectives are more important because they really do spell out the details and the importance.
So what I'm doing is just connecting goals that might be connected with an objective, or at least are very tightly linked. Are we ready to move on to another draft statement? Oh, go ahead, Brandy.
So I'm looking at the mural space. Are you suggesting with the placement of resilience against anticipated disturbances, is that meant to be a new goal for wildfire resilience? Is it in this box because you're saying that it's associated with wildfire resilience specifically?
It's in this box because I think this falls under the what do we want to achieve. So this is where I'm placing draft goal statements that are more higher level, more goals instead of objectives.
Okay, so the sentence above, the line above that is not, these are not nested under the line above it.
No, they
Okay.
are not. These are all just goal statements that we're coming up with here together. Does that make sense? Okay.
And Jim, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I think this is a highly valuable process, but I believe that would take us probably another 10 hours to go through it with the whole group to distill things down into their proper essence. So I would suggest that we have an ad hoc committee sit down and do this and then bring it back, and then there'd still be some amending, et cetera, do a product, send it out to everybody, get feedback, et cetera. I think this is way too unwieldy to do in this format on a 1-hour meeting.
I totally hear you, Jim, and I appreciate that feedback. My goal for this is, so we have two things that we're working with. One is the challenge of limitations in decision making with the full group, right? So when you all, and just wanting to make sure that we're working through this process in subcommittees in a very similar way. So my goal of going through this exercise right now is just to make sure that when you do the work in subcommittees, that you're going through this process in a really similar way, because myself and Kate won't be able to attend those subcommittee meetings. And so my hope is that by going through this exercise, just with a couple of these lines together as a group, that everybody is aligned in the way that we're thinking about goal statements and objectives, so that you're doing, so that when we reconvene and review, we have similar outcomes, right, in our goal and objective statements. Does that make sense? Does it still feel like it's not worth the time?
Indubitably.
Thank you, Chip. I appreciate it. Oliver, yes.
Yeah, from a technical standpoint, the box on the right should also include reduced stream flows.
When you say the box on the right,
The
do you
yellow
mean
box,
this one?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And from a technical standpoint, it should also include reduced spring and fall stream flows.
Okay. Reduced spring, fall stream flows. Okay. So we've got about 15 more minutes. So I would propose we go through this with a couple more statements. Again, we're not gonna finish this in this meeting, but hopefully it'll just, once we go through a couple, I'm hoping that it'll become more familiar, and that way when you all break into subcommittees to go through this, it'll hopefully make a little bit more sense, be a little bit more clear. Yes, Brandy.
Can you just highlight to the left of your yellow boxes, the goal, this ochre colored box that has your outline for goals? I don't know that everybody got your goal assignment like I didn't. I had to just give you something based on what I thought you were looking for. So I just wanted to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And
I just took a picture of it, so I'm good. You
Okay.
can scroll back to.
Cool. And the hope is when I send you, the kind of template for working through this with subcommittees, I'll have these guiding questions. And hopefully that'll be helpful. Okay, so let's go through this with a couple more if we have time. So here, let's go to number 2. Collaborate with private, tribal, state, and federal landowners to promote understanding of the role of forests in Whatcom County's overall ecological system and ways to incorporate that into future policies and management actions. So I see more of an objective or an action about collaboration. And then, maybe more of a goal statement of promoting understanding. Does anyone have thoughts or ideas about what a goal statement for this could look like? Yes, Chris.
So I mean, this wasn't my idea, so if I'm stepping on someone's toes, just jump in. But how I took this and what I kind of liked about it is maybe this is I guess an education and communication plan. The goal is for agencies like me, the Department of Natural Resources, to have an outreach, education, communication plan in place to provide information about how and why we manage the way we do. And so that would be, it seems to me, a goal, at least from an agency perspective, that we would be able to contribute to. And in that, I guess I would add to the language, economic or ecological systems and economic contribution. I think it's both ecological and economic that we need to talk about when we're discussing at least Department of Natural Resource managed forests in Whatcom County. So that's one possible way.
Thank you, Chris. I think that sounds great. I think I saw Barry and then Stephen.
Yeah, as I read that, it's actually from the county perspective, because it's a collaboration by the county with those entities. And I would much rather see a forum that is developed, a permanent forum, including local government, cities, county, state, even the science-based universities that actually has a regional perspective that then can use their different laws and activities, permits, reviews, much more integrated and efficient. So I would kind of write that differently instead of making it from the county perspective, because you're dealing with private land, public land, everything in between. And so if you had a forum, if you had this thing, if you had a water quality issue and you would have a forum of water quality folks, it's not this the county, collaborating with the Department of Ecology. You're all sitting down together at the same forum. And so all the other entities are collaborating with the county. I mean, it seems, I guess, obvious somewhat, but I think the way it's written doesn't completely get the idea of essentially a round table.
So Barry, do you have a suggested, thinking about what the goal would be, right? So what the target is, do you have suggested language that captures that idea of a forum?
I could, but I can't see your screen on the original language.
Oh yeah, sure. Let me
Sorry,
scroll over
and
to
I don't
it.
have it in front of me here. So
Yeah, no problem. So it's right here.
Oh, number 2. Okay, yeah. Let's see. I would say establish a collaborative forum.
Okay.
With the county, the private county, state, all levels of government, basically, and tribes. The tribes are in there, I hope.
Establish a
Collaborative forum.
Sorry, this defaults to a
And
little
with
bit
that,
bigger than I want.
Yeah, and that establishes a different way of doing things in a way, because, for instance, Northwest Straits Commission, the original proposal for the Northwest Straits Marine Sanctuary was to have a forum where not only the local government, but the federal government, even the Department of Defense, would be sitting at a table, and they'd be basically at an even level. So if the county said, hey, this we cannot go with this, they would have a veto. But it all bring in the Department of Defense, which normally, if you're dealing as a state or local government, you don't have much to say over what the federal entities want to do, like drop jet fuel into the sea as they land, before they land. And so, but that would have actually allowed that group to say, look, you got to stop this, and it would actually require the federal government to stop doing those types of actions. And so this is not going quite that far, what I'm saying, but it's just to have a collaboration. So you're all sitting at a table, and you can find out, well, the state's doing this, and the feds are doing this, and the tribes are trying to do this. There's some other people out there too that may want to be at that table, and it would make much better decisions and consistent planning over the long haul.
That's really helpful to hear the why, Barry. Yeah, the why behind it. Stephen and then Jim.
Yeah, thanks. I'm pretty sure I wrote this one, so I wanted to and I think my intention was close to what Barry just set out. The idea was not so much a plan, like a formal document, but a forum, or a place where people who are involved in trying to regulate and promote resilience against the various effects of climate change and other changes could work on this. But there's a couple of other things. One is that I was thinking more than anything else of landowners. In other words, not just regulatory agencies working with each other, but landowners, which of course would include DNR, would include the Forest Service, and would include tribes, and would include, importantly, private, both corporate and individual private landowners, so that they would all be involved in the process. And I think the other thing is public understanding. In other words, this is a pretty omnibus goal, I guess, but it also has to do with educating the public about what's going on. And so that would mean including environmentalists as well as landowners. As I say, this isn't just interagency, at least as I looked at it. It's inter-stakeholder, which would include agencies, but not be limited to that. Barry, I see you're nodding, so I hope I didn't contradict what you said.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. That's great. And Jim, I'll go to you in just 1 second. I want to say something out loud that I wrote here, because what I heard as you were talking through that, because these are still sort of, actiony objective statements. What I heard the goal there is really an educated public, or is that is a collaborative, like, decision making body. Those are really what rose to the top as the goals there. Does that?
Yeah, and that's two, right? The educated public and a collaborative decision-making body are, they reinforce each other, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah, right. Okay.
If I can just interject.
Yeah,
real
go
quick.
ahead, Jim. Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
It's Barry. Sorry, Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that that's exactly, I wanted to make sure that we had the people on the ground, the landowners and actually the recreationists and everything else that have a stake in all this. Because in my experience, the best and most efficient and effective government actions are where we've actually worked with the community on the ground and brought in all the resources from the different agencies, federal, state, tribe, whatever. Say, here's the goal. We all agree on this goal of, improving this fish reach or something. What can we all bring? And the conservation district can bring something, and NC can bring something, and the Department of Fisheries can bring something, ecology brings something, and the county brings something. You get the best result, and the people on the ground think, oh, this government is actually working together, rather than having 8 different people show up at their door saying different things. And that really makes a big difference on how people have hope in the future, actually.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Barry. Yeah, that's really helpful context, and that makes a lot of sense. Jim, go ahead. Thanks for being so patient.
Just being a nerd again, but I think we're still doing objectives. I think they're awesome, by the way, but if we want to talk about improving cooperation among private and public stakeholders, I'm just free associating this, then the objectives would be what we were talking about. I think the goals still need to be more fundamental and not saying how we're going to do the goal at all. Just say what we want to accomplish, and these are awesome objectives of following it up, but I don't want to get the cart before the horse.
Yeah, great point, Jim. Do you think, this goal of having an educated public, does that still read like a more of an objective statement to you?
Exactly. No, that
okay.
one,
Yeah.
That one's a goal.
Yeah.
The way we're going to bring together people in a collaborative body is an objective, and it has to do with people who actually have power, more direct power over the outcomes than the public has. So I think they're two.
So this one is more of an objective, you would say, is the decision making, the collaborative decision making.
Yeah, I think that's more of an objective, but it speaks to improve cooperation.
Right. I like that. Now we're getting to more of the goal statements. Okay. Improved cooperation. Between who would you say is the who?
Among
among.
and this is just off the top of my head, among public and private stakeholders.
Okay.
Sorry for speaking up so much.
I appreciate the input. I think that was really helpful to get us to something I think reads as a really great goal statement. And I think I saw some nodding heads. Anyone have any feedback or comments on these two goal statements of an educated public, which is, very general, and these are not final. This is not the final language by any means, but getting the ideas to virtual paper here. Improve cooperation among public and private stakeholders. Does anyone have any additional thoughts or comments on these two goal statements that came out of just to zoom over to it, this objective statement?
I think the only minor edit maybe for the public component is flagging agencies and partners. Sometimes the term stakeholder.
The cooperation?
Yeah, your improved cooperation.
Stakeholders, agencies,
And
instead of stakeholders, is that what you were saying, Chris, or in addition to?
in addition to, yeah, agencies and partners, or sometimes the term stakeholder has loaded connotation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then Jim, is this a new hand or is this your hand from your,
Sorry, I'll take down.
oh, that's okay. I see Frank and then Oliver. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I was just wondering on when you say going back to that get improved cooperation, does that mean communication also?
So I would envision, Frank, that from this goal statement of improved cooperation, one of the objectives would be specific to communication methods. And I'll just I'll make a note here so that we're capturing that. Oops, I don't want you to connect to that. Connect to that. Okay. Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe this is my own little pet topic, but goal, an educated public. I understand that. But when I cut my teeth on public engagement in the context of NEPA, it was preferred to say an informed public rather than an educated public, from the standpoint that education refers to going through some sort of a university or college program. And so I think that informed is a preferred word over educated. Sorry for nitpicking.
No, I think that's great. It's a great suggestion. Thank you, Oliver. Ellen?
No, I think this is a really good goal, but I think it maybe could be a goal for just about any kind of task that is put forward. And it seems almost too broad if you're talking about forest resilience as being our overall goal. And an informed public is good. Is it achievable? I don't know. I guess I tend to like a little more specificity on what we're doing. But that's my contribution.
Thank you, Ellen. I agree that just generally saying an informed public is, there are definitely cases when the goal statements are too broad. So I added in related to forest resiliency, and we can, I think again, the refining will come, but just to get a little bit more specific, at least on the topic. So it is 11:55, and I want to make sure that Chris has some time to lead us through the task force subcommittee discussion. I hope that this was helpful in getting us all on, the same page about what goal statements look like as opposed to the objective statements. And I'm really happy that we have such a great list of many of them read as already as objective statements. So we'll talk through this a little bit more at the end when we talk about the homework, but the hope is that once you form your subcommittees, you can go through and continue this process of really looking at the specific objectives and zooming out and trying to come up with more big picture goal statements. And then seeing how they tie together. So in the end, we would have a few bigger picture goal statements, and the objectives will fall under them, and then eventually specific actions and overcoming threats would fall under those umbrellas. Any final questions or comments before I pass this back to Chris? And Ellen, do you have an additional comment with your hand, or is that an old hand?
Yes, I would,
okay, yeah, go ahead.
As a follow-up to the fact that object or goal could be so applied to just about anything, I think I would look at the the third goal and just rewrite it to say maximum forest climate resilience is achieved. And we could go on to say that reduce damage for wildfires, pests and disease, etc. And if the public read that, then they would know that that is really what this Forest Resilient Task Force is trying to achieve. I don't know. But it's just a thought.
You're saying this yellow,
No, I'm saying the third
oh.
one on the list.
Oh, okay. On our, this adopt science.
Yeah,
ba-
and
oh, okay.
they say maximize or maximum forest climate resilience is achieved that reduces damage from wildfires, you know.
So you're saying kind of like a definition of what the
What the-
ultimate goal is for,
Yes,
okay.
what it means to maximize forest climate resilience.
I agree that I think that definition is an important piece of the plan and falls outside of the goals and objective setting is kind of its own important piece of just having a clear overall, more of a definition than a goal statement, right? Of like what maximized climate resilience or forest resilience means.
Right.
Yeah, so I would propose that if time allows that we tackle that at our next full group meeting, is to talk through that definition. Thank you, Alan.
Can I ask one more process question, Melanie?
Yeah,
Just
Chris.
to think through, you it sounded like you were kind of kicking the goal condensation process to the subcommittees, but do you have like a timeline or a trajectory you're hoping where we're gonna condense them and then bring them back to the whole group at the next meeting, or
Yeah, at our, if I'm hoping that the subcommittees will have time to meet before our next meeting in September, and then bring forward the one or two statements for discussion at our next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Since time is of the essence.
Yes, it is. Okay, you good?
Yes, I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you all. I think that was really helpful and I appreciate the feedback.
All right. Well, I'll take us on to our next agenda item, which is establish task force subcommittees. So I know a lot of you have worked in the forestry world one way or another for a bunch of years. So we had a small group kind of before this task force came together and tried to kind of condense down what seemed like three good buckets to try to tackle what is a very broad and complicated subject matter. And the three that we came up with, and as it says on the agenda, this is a draft list, so certainly subject to modification or the creation of additional subcommittees. But given that we're trying to tackle forest resilience, this whole concept of climate smart forestry, given that we're expecting, hotter, drier summers, wetter, colder winters, other kind of variability in weather and impacts on the forestry industry, kind of flagged this could be a good subcommittee to try to tackle, what are some climate smart forestry principles or approaches that could be factored into our planning process. Second bullet was trying to recognize the role of the industry. I think, at least in my mind, when I think of forest resilience, a big component of this is how do we maintain a resilient forestry industry and economy. So as we develop our recommendations, how do we also ensure that we're maintaining a viable and possibly even an enhanced forestry industry? And the third one kind of tags on what we just had some discussion about, which is that forest management agency coordination. I know the county's been trying to improve our coordination with DNR and limited engagement with U.S. Forest Service. And certainly we have our forestry advisory committee, but wanted to flag that as well. So those are the three initial kind of buckets that we'd thought through. But yeah, opened up for discussion. We'll go Oliver first and then Russ.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I certainly don't disagree with those initial three subcommittees. When you describe the climate smart forestry, I think you were describing what can be done to promote the forest industry in the face of climate change. But I think it's more than that. It's also how do we transform forest management to facilitate the resilience of the forest ecosystem in regard to other outputs from the forest ecosystem, such as water quality, water quantity, wildlife, so on and so forth. So there's kind of, I look at forest resilience is kind of two buckets. One is how to promote forest resilience to maintain the forest economy, and then also the role of forest management in other outputs from the forested areas.
Great, thank you. Russ, go ahead.
Yes, I think the one area that I would add is the wildfire resilience. I think as a end product of our committee, that's the one I feel most strongly that if we can protect Whatcom County citizens from the ravages of wildfire, we would have spent our time wisely. The climate smart forestry, I think that's really more of a subset of forest industry or forest management, because the county, other than our own 10,000 plus acres, really doesn't have a say in forestry. It's more the other agencies and private owners. So it's more part of that coordination with those other owners who actually are doing the forest management.
Thanks, Russ. Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, Oliver actually really stated what I was thinking also, because all the benefits, I mean, it's true, there's a lot of federal and state-owned land, but they're also in holdings. There's lots of corridors that are really important, especially along streams that provide, and this could be a route for fires to follow, but it's also, you know, most important for water quality and wildlife and fish and everything else. And all those other benefits of what the forest provides ecologically. So I think, you know, more than just climate, it's an ecologically sound ecosystem or forestry system that we really should be having as one of our main goals, and that we should be focusing on. The fire resilience part is important, but in a lot of ways, it's kind of a little bit different thing, you know, than the more the scientific part of it.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. There's a lot of different ways to slice this. Do you see, I'll come to you one sec, Steve. Do you see Carl's comment in the chat about changing the name of Climate Smart Forest Management to Climate Smart Forestry? Or excuse me, I got that vice versa. Climate Smart Forest Management instead of forestry. Which makes sense to me. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to suggest exactly the same thing that Carl did, because that it would include fire resilience, it would include water quality, it would include, you know, ecosystem services in particular, but it also includes, you know, producing forest products. And I think climate smart includes ecosystems. In a sense, if you be climate smart in an ecological way, you can also be climate smart in a social and economic way. In other words, you know, you think about environmental justice here. Well, you have to protect vulnerable communities from the effects of climate change. That's an aspect of being climate smart that it overlaps with, but it's not the same as the ecological aspect. So I think the Climate Smart Forest Management is a great title for a subcommittee. I also wanted to say something about the third one. Forest Management Agency coordination, refer back to the decision of that second goal that we had in Melanie's, in the part that Melanie led with the whiteboard. Is it just agency, or does it also include owners and that are not specifically government agencies? So maybe the third one should be a little bit broader than just agency coordination. Interested parties, stakeholders, I don't know what the proper term is, and it'll change next year anyway, but to include, include things other than just government agencies.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I do know we've got the Darrington Collaborative, just a couple counties south of us. That's kind of a good representation, I think, of what you're describing.
Okay, thanks.
Ellen, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say ditto on forest climate smart forest management, and I think it includes everything we're talking about, the ecosystem, the fire management, everything. So yeah, I just wanted to be quick and say that.
Thanks. Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add on the first one, what we're really talking about is watershed management, not just forest management, but watershed management. And so that term should be weaved into our work in general on the resilience plan. But certainly, in my mind, that first task force item should include watershed management, not just forest management.
Thanks. Jim?
I think exactly what we call these aren't as important as our understanding what they include. For instance, including watershed with forest management. I just want to make sure, and I think that each group, if they want, or if it's important to them what it's called, could edit the title of their subcommittee. But I just want to make sure that everything is included in the subcommittees on a broader sense. Okay.
Great. Brandy, go ahead.
So thanks for this list. I assume this is a list to start and that we can add from here. We're not limited to these, just having 3 committees. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And could I just get a clear statement about what our expectations are around these committees, what we're asking them to do? It would help me understand whether or not the complement of committees is inclusive of all the topics that we want it to be inclusive of, if I had a better understanding of what we're going to ask these committees to do.
Well, Melanie kind of flagged in some of her narrative, kind of the complicatedness of all this, as well as the timeline that we're on. So part of the thought was, given that, we've got more to cover than we can cover in one meeting, to try to allow committee members to pick an area that they're most excited about or most knowledgeable about and have the opportunity to go a little bit deeper. So these subcommittees are going to be responsible for helping to craft and inform development of the ultimate forest resilience plan. And we're just trying to create some buckets within which to have some of these more focused discussions.
But the committee, and when we say that the committee can, like sorry, I can't remember what we said in the rules about the number of people that can be on the committees.
It has to be less than a quorum.
Okay. So they can be pretty packed if we want them to be.
Could be up to 9 members.
Okay. All right. So thanks for that clarification. So I guess what I see missing from the original list, I'm not sure what I'm looking at here on the screen right now, if these are proposed modifications, but
I'm just trying to take some notes as we go, just to try to capture some of the discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I think that something that gets at well, I just want to make sure that forest stewardship is captured by a committee, not just forestry, commercial forestry, and forestry practices, but I really want to see us take on this question of resiliency across all lands. And in order to do that, we've got to have a focus on private land management. And I'm not sure where you want to put it, but if we have to call it out separately from forestry or forest practices or forest management, then I would call it forest stewardship. But I don't know that it needs to be separate. I just want to elevate it. I want to elevate this consideration for the group.
Thank you. Trevor, go ahead.
Hey, I like the idea or the term of climate smart forest management. I would like to share a little bit of what comes to my mind though, as well as cultural resources protection. And the reason why I say that is because it seems like there's been mentions about economics, our ability to harvest, but protection in the sense that we have gathering sites that are in forest settings most oftentimes, and there's going to be things that are going to be stored, but it's not just about storage, it's about the opportunity to gather. And so it's not always about just what you can extract, but what else is present on the landscape, especially in the forest. And so, I mean, I'm not really trying to dive into it necessarily, but just understand that cultural resources, there's certain levels of protection that need to be set in place. And so it's, like I said, it's just in terms of, ecological matters that, there has to be a lot of diversity, I guess, and, for tribes, we go to the mountains, we go to the forest to be able to gather, but it's more than that. But again, it's just the emphasis is that, the ability to gather. So, that might be huckleberries, that might be cedar, that might be something else. It's just something to kind of put out there and just be mindful of. But that's all I had to share.
Thanks, Trevor. Jim, go ahead.
I may be an outlier on this, but I did notice it indicated in some of the goal objectives on our list, and it's a whole different area outside of helping foresters manage their forests better, and that is planning and regulatory mechanisms to increase canopy cover, or you could add more things along with increasing cover, diversity, et cetera, but I think it's way too narrow to just deal in the commercial forestry industry as a targeted area of concern, because I think that the land clearing is the most destructive phenomenon going on right now in terms of our forest resiliency. And I think that that's outside of the forest management agencies to impact. And so I'd like to see a subgroup working on that. That's my area of interest.
Thanks, Jim. Does it seem like that could fit under the forestry industry if we're talking about the actual loss of forest land?
Well, I'm even talking about Joe Smith with 20 acre R20 who wants to cut down a bunch of trees to build this, that, or the other, as well as somebody who has 20 acres of forest that they want to convert to a subdevelopment.
Yeah.
I want to make it harder.
Oh, I got you. Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to feedback on what my nephew Trevor mentioned about cultural resources. I think along with cultural resources should be religious and spiritual sites also should be included in that cultural resource. Should be cultural resources / religious and spiritual sites also. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Corey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. So we're trying to make, I guess I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around what subcommittees we would make, because we don't have objectives settled in, to my understanding. Is that right? Or did we agree on those? It just
No.
seems like it'd be a lot easier to bucket subcommittees if we actually know what our overall objectives are gonna be, and then we could kind of fit them in to the subcommittees that way. Because again, it comes back to the same question. I think someone mentioned it today, but it's the one that I had at the last meeting. It's just gonna be tough to, like, for me, like, defining what climate smart forest management means is part of an objective, right? It's part of one of the objectives that's been suggested is coming up with a glossary and an agreed upon terms. And then you can go from there to try and figure out, again, who are we trying to influence? What type of land ownership management are we trying to influence with something like climate smart forestry? I mean, the argument can be made that really any forestry that isn't overly damaging to the environment is climate smart because it's growing trees rather than allowing for, so it depends on, how you define it, right? So I just feel like I'm a little confused on how to come up with subcommittee buckets.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all, Corey. And I think we're trying to throw a wide enough net to be able to get into those weeds to determine what each subcommittee will cover. And there's nothing, if we decide on 3 today, there's nothing that prevents us from creating a new subcommittee in a month or two. This is really just trying to get us started, to have some more of those focused conversations that with our limited timeline once a month, we're not gonna be able to tackle. Melanie, did you want to jump something in real quick?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I just want to make sure that everyone's clear on the goals of this, because we don't need to necessarily get into the weeds of defining climate smart forest management. This is just a way of bucketing interests, really, so that folks are joining a subcommittee that they feel like represents their area of expertise or interest. So this is why it's just more general, so that, as Chris mentioned, we can just keep things moving and nothing is set in stone. Like Chris said, we can add an additional one, or if the one that you decide to join doesn't end up representing your expertise or interest, you can shift around. So I think we're just trying to set something up so that we can begin the work of moving things forward outside of our meeting times here, since an hour and a half once a month is limiting.
All right. We'll go Russ. Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, I think when we're looking at setting up the subcommittees, we need to have a way that the subcommittees can get started and try to define what they want to do or what they think their role is, and then come right back to the main group so that we can say, oh, okay, yeah, that is in line with what we're thinking, or no, you're barking up the wrong tree. I mean, forest management is a good example. We could spend a lot of time developing recommendations on forest management, and then we present them to DNR and they'd say, well, actually we've been doing this for decades and we have a plan. And so thanks, but no thanks. And so I think we need to make sure that the work we're doing is aligned with what the county's role is in this whole general area, and fits with other agencies' roles and responsibilities and legal authority. So I just don't. I want to make sure that we don't go chasing down rabbit holes that we then are really not accomplishing anything.
Yep, it's good to remember the framework within we operate, which is kind of advising the county and how the county can engage this topic. Brandy?
So that list that you had up on screen, Chris, it does and it doesn't work for me. But so I just want to say that I think that having subcommittees organized around the work versus subcommittees organized around topical content, topics of interest, are kind of different things. And for me, I the aggregation of all of the things that were said here today under 3 categories of subcommittee is not really working for me. I just want you to know that. And so I don't really know where to go from here, but, and also my proclivity is, my, tendency is to go in the direction of how can the subcommittee be useful around the production of the plan? How can the subcommittee be useful around advancing the conversations that we're having in the larger group? So I don't need to be in a committee that talks about all things, forest management. I want to be in a committee that is going to help us get the plan written to include all the things that we need to have, that we want to have in the plan, all the recommendations that we want to be advancing to council. So I'm still struggling with the purpose of these committees and how we're structuring them. I'll play ball however you guys want to go, but I'm just letting you know that it's not really landing with me the way we've talked about it so far in this meeting.
Thanks, Brandy. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, just thinking about the different subcommittees and what's been proposed, there seems like there's one that's focusing around very narrow focus of forestry and forest industry. And maybe I'm suggesting maybe a different subcommittee or an alternative one that also looks at an all lands approach that takes it, so we look at the distribution of forests across watersheds but looking at it like, how does this play out? Because especially if we're thinking about climate informed management, we're really talking about very large spatial scales. So that'd be my suggestion is adding a subcommittee or refining one to have an all lands approach.
You think that all lands approach, was there one of the existing kind of proposed committees that you think that applies to or could apply to?
You know what? Would you do me a favor and put your list back up there?
Yeah.
Thanks. And maybe it just ties in with the climate smart forest management. I'm from a Forest Service standpoint, I'm more inclined to climate informed management, just as semantics. I think at that point things become more consistent across scales.
Sounds good. I do know that
different land ownerships, treaty rights, those types of things.
Sounds good. Steve, I'll take you as the last comment, and then got to move along. Go ahead.
I was just saying, Kevin, I appreciate the idea of all lands approach, but that expands the tasks of this task force, which are already huge. We're going to deal with agricultural land. We're going to deal with fishing grounds. We're going to deal with urban growth areas. All of those are aspects of all lands climate smart management. But it seems it would explode the mandate of this task force to an unmanageable scale. And it seems to me it's best to stick to forest.
I think that's what he said. He said all forest approach, not all lands.
Yeah, I'm just thinking within the county, because where I'm seeing is, if pushing 30% of the county is federal land, how to contribute to this effort, in a meaningful way. So yeah.
All right, Frank.
Yeah, Chris, I was just thinking, wildlife and the cultural resource protection could be bucketed in the same list. I mean, they're the same. Wildlife is a cultural activity for tribes, so those could be one bullet point instead of 2. And also, I was wondering that wildlife could be also listed in the forest industry and economics. Also, because what's done down there will affect that also. So,
That's
just
good.
a thought. I was just wondering.
Well, I know thanks for that, Frank. I know we're at time. But I kind of just wanted to go through and see if people wanted to volunteer for one of these subcommittees, just so we've got something to go off of in between. Frank, is there a particular subcommittee you're interested in the most?
Wildlife,
I'm gonna put you on the climate forest management.
including cultural.
Great, thanks. Russ, you got one?
Yeah, I'd go with the forest management coordination, the wildfire.
Great. Got you, Ellen. Steve? You're on mute, Steve. Sorry, Steve, didn't hear you. You were on mute.
Yeah, either forest management or coordination. Probably forest management, but I could also do the coordination with.
All right, Barry?
Yeah, climate informed.
Okay, Carl?
Forest industry and economics.
Okay. Brandy?
Well, I'm proposing a fourth category, and in the notes, that's where I would like to be. If you can't come up with a fourth category, then you can throw me into climate informed forest management.
Did you have a proposed title for your fourth?
I'm trying to figure it out, but I think it needs to take the question of stewardship and conversion of forest land. I don't see forest land as designated forest land exclusively or zone forestry. I think it's land with forest cover, and we need to be addressing conversion and loss of forest cover at that kind of scale. I think stewardship is a big piece of that. I'm not sure what to call it. But I think that it's, yeah, so, but I can't be a committee of one, so it's not going to work.
Thanks.
I'll join you.
That's a committee of two. Kevin?
I'll include that into the two, Chris.
All right, sounds good.
Hey, yeah, I'm happy to go with that possible fourth one as well. I think that stewardship conversion aligns with like big picture things across the county.
Great. Tracy?
The forest, the coordination, and then the economics, I think, would be a good fit for me, but I'm also, I don't want to do three because it would stretch me too thin, but I would be interested in the last one too. So just leave me on those two for the moment, and we'll see how these develop out.
Sounds good. Corey?
Maybe the first one, climate informed forest management.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Trevor?
Put me down for the fourth one. And then the forest industry and economics.
Great. Thanks. Chris, Hanky?
Yeah, I think my understanding is I think the commissioner's office is expecting me to be a part of this, the coordination, the agency coordination category. So I think that's an appropriate place for the DNR.
Great. David?
Sorry, I was trying to find my unmute button. I think the first one, climate informed forest management.
Great. Oliver?
Yeah, the climate informed forest management as well as the forest industry and economics.
Great. All right. Well, we're way over time. If anyone changes their mind or decides they want to join another one, don't hesitate to let me know and we'll make that happen. And yeah, it's all work in progress. Thanks for everyone's patience as we get through this. So just to try to rapid fire through the rest of the agenda, David, go ahead.
I guess I was a little unclear on, so how do we move forward with these subcommittees then? Are they self-organizing or what?
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun?
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. I'll start an email chain with each subcommittee. And ideally it would be great if one of each subcommittee wanted to kind of volunteer to be the lead for that group and pick it up from there. But I'll start the first email chain and then we'll see where we go. Public comment period. We've got 2 attendees listed in the public. I know Alan or Kaylee, if either one of you want to raise your hand, so they can bring you over and let you speak. Speak now or for hold your peace. All right, looks like both of them. Kaylee, go ahead. If Kate can give you access.
All right, Kaylee, you should be able to come off mute.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Kaylee Galloway here, Whatcom County Council. Just really wanted to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy lives and work schedules to do this work. It's incredibly important for our county to be looking into the future and thinking about what our role is as a county and landowners in partnership with you all. So again, just want to thank you. I've really enjoyed getting to hear from you all today and look forward to attending future meetings as well.
Thanks, Kaylee. Can we get Alan over as well? There he is. Go ahead, Alan.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to listen in on the conversation. I find it very stimulating, and my interest is that all things are connected, and we need to find a balance that satisfies as many people as possible.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, appreciate you both joining and listening in, and I'll pass it back to Kate for the wrap up.
I'll take us through wrap up really, really quickly. A couple of things, just you have our meeting schedule in your packet. We wanted to note that we'll need to reschedule our October and November meetings. So we'll send out a poll to do that since they fall on a holiday. And we don't want you all to be meeting with us on the holiday. So we'll be rescheduling those 2 meetings. As Chris said, he'll reach out to get the subcommittees established, and then we'll send out more detailed description of the homework assignment, but it'll be similar to what we all walked through today. The goal being we want to end up with those high-level draft goal statements and the objectives that nest within them. We'd also like to ask that as you have access or knowledge of existing plans and strategies that you'd like to make sure, get woven into this plan and inform the plan, go ahead and start emailing those to Kate. And I believe you all should have Kate's email by now so that we can start keeping track of them and make sure that they're getting woven in appropriately later on. The last thing is that if you have not already completed the Whatcom County Open Government Training Certification, we ask that you all do that as soon as possible. And in our follow-up email, we'll include a link to that if you haven't received it. So I think that's it from us, Chris.
Hey, Kate, quick question. I filled that out a long time ago, but I wasn't able just to send it back. Should I just scan it and send it to you? Does that work?
Yep, that works.
That works, Barry.
Okay, well, we're 4 minutes over. Thanks for everyone's patience. Look for more email correspondence from me and the team. And thanks again for all your participation. We are adjourned.
Looks good,
Thanks,
Barry.
everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Barry. Bye.
Thanks all.